and welcome to Traditional Painting the Digital Way. This is where I use digital painting apps to teach traditional painting techniques. In this video, I'm going to discuss composition. A lot of people have trouble understanding composition, and so I thought that I would give a few pointers on composition and some of the things that I've learned on composition. So if you want to get really complicated and mathematical, which I don't, but you can do that with your compositions, and you can look into the geometric style compositions, which uses the golden mean, the Fibonacci spiral, and the rule of thirds. Basically, these are all complicated mathematical formulas and geometric things. The golden mean is this ratio right here, and it's represented by this equation, and basically it means this is what it looks like when you put it into geometric form. And the Fibonacci spiral is also used with that, and it is a sequence of numbers that basically comes out into that spiral, and it's found in nature, like in snail shells and flowers and things like that. And if you want to really see a complicated explanation of it, try this book, The Classical Drawing Atelier, and also Lessons in Classical Drawing by Juliet Aristides, or Aristides, I'm not sure exactly, but these books are really good, and they give you the whole explanation and tell you how to get it and do all kinds of mathematical stuff. And so you can play around with the golden mean and the Fibonacci spiral, and it shows you that you can flip all these focal points around, and if you play around with the diagonals, you end up with something called the rule of thirds, which basically means that you can put your focal points anywhere on these X's, and that will be more pleasing to the eye. So here I have some examples of where you would put the focal point if you're following the rule of thirds. Here I have a painting of the old water pump, and it has a rose in the bucket, and the rose would be the focal point, so you put that on one of the points that is in the rule of thirds. Here the moon is also off to the side in one of the focal points, and also the moon in this painting here is off to the side, so it's not in the dead center. So you can go ahead and just put your focal point anywhere in your painting as long as it's not dead center, because the dead center kind of makes it look boring. Now, can you put your stuff in the dead center if you want to? Yes, and as a matter of fact, the Hildebrandt brothers do that when they're doing book covers and when you're doing movie posters. So you can actually put your focal point right in the middle of your painting if you want to, but it just depends on what kind of format you're in. If you're doing more just paintings to hang on the wall, you're probably going to want to follow the rule of thirds and put your focal point anywhere on that grid that shows you where it looks better and is a little bit off to the side of the center. The best explanation of composition that I've ever seen from an artist is from Yarnell, and he has a book, volume 6, that explains how to do composition, and he breaks it down into 3 types: single subject, L-shaped, and triangle-shaped compositions. And the first one is the single subject composition. Single subject composition means it's only one subject, so it's pretty self-explanatory. It's like portraits. You would just do the one subject in the middle. As you can see here with my Eagle Dancer portrait, it's just one subject. And then the next example is an old barn in the snow, and you can see it through a knothole. So that kind of makes it a single subject as well. And then this one here with the cross and the roses on it is also sort of the single subject of the painting. And there's a little bit of things around it, and I'll talk about those later on as to what they are. The next one is the L-shaped composition, and there's 2 kinds of L-shaped compositions. the regular L shape, and a reverse L shape. And so what that means is that one looks, the subject and the things that are connected to it are in sort of an L shape. So here's an example. Here's an old tree, and you can see that the rocks that are next to it spread out, and it makes sort of an L shape. Then the next one is a reverse L shape, and you can see that the silhouette of the yucca makes the L shape, and then all the little plants that are next to it, and so they all kind of go in an L shape. And here's another example. The windmill and the water tank are also in sort of a reversed L shape. And these are pretty simple compositions, but the ones that are a little bit more complicated are triangular compositions, and there's 3 types of these. The first one is triangular shapes that point to the main subject. The second one is the main subject is within objects that form a triangle. And the third one is the main subject is part of objects that form a triangle. Now these are sort of complicated, so I'll explain what they mean here. So we want to go with the first one, and it is where the triangles point to the main subject. And this is kind of like one-point perspective as well, if you're drawing buildings and things. But here's an example. The focal point is the old house, and the fence and the mountain and the snow is all leading up to the focal point in the middle, which is the house. And they're all sort of in triangular shapes. And that just directs the viewer's eye to the main object in the middle of your painting. And here I have a picture of an old road, and all the trees and the road and the fence all point to the little highlighted bush, which is the focal point of this painting. And then here's one with a barn and sort of off to the center in the middle, and the fences and the road all point to it. Now the second type is the triangular composition where the focal point is surrounded by objects that are sort of in a triangle. So here I have an example of the yucca, and it's sort of the main subject and the focal point, and it's inside the objects that make a triangle, the clouds and the old cactus in the corner, and also the other yuccas that make sort of the point of the triangle. Here in the next example, we have an old dead tree, and it's in front of the mittens that are in Monument Valley. That's what those are called. And the old dead tree sort of makes one end of the triangle, and then it points to the other cliff, and then the line of sight goes back to the old dead tree again, and the focal point, which is the main mittens there, is in the middle. So that forms the triangle with the main subject in the middle there. Now the last type of triangular composition is where the objects and the main subject form a triangle. So in this one, I have an example here of the little girls catching the fireflies, and they form a triangle with the tree that's behind them, and these are all main objects and main subjects, and they form a little bit of a triangle there. In the next painting, I have a little boy fishing out of a puddle, and he and the big tree and the bushes along the side of the road form a triangle, and the fishing pole points towards the tree, and that gives your triangle look, and then you look down the tree, and then it goes back towards the little boy, and that's how the eye flow will go in the painting, and that gives it the triangular composition. Some other things to consider in your painting are negative space and eye stoppers. Eye stoppers are things that keep your viewer's eye from wandering off your painting, and negative space is the space around objects. So here we see the picture of the vase, and it's also faces. That illustrates the negative space between the faces, and it looks like a vase. So here we have an example of boring negative space, because you want your negative space to look interesting. So here's interesting negative space where things are not all uniform and they're not all the same. And this is what you want to do, is make the space around your objects more interesting for the viewer's eye. So here's an example of a painting that I did of a giant hand painting the cosmos. And you can see that the space around the hand and the nebula clouds and the comets are sort of ununiform and irregular, and it leads the viewer's eye through the painting, and it doesn't look boring and equal looking on either side. And then also with his flowers, there's negative space around the leaves and the petals, and that gives a more interesting look. And then here around the trees and the little girl and the lion, the space is not all the same and it's not all uniform, and the trees are not spaced exactly the same length apart, and the branches are all jagged and different looking, and that just makes it a lot more interesting for the viewer's eye to wander through the painting. So to sum it all up, you want negative space to be interesting. The empty space around all your objects need to be interesting to promote good eye flow through your painting. Another thing that you want to do to promote good eye flow is to put in eye stoppers. Eye stoppers are objects that you put in the corner of your painting to keep the viewer from getting bored and going on to the next painting. And it just keeps them looking at your painting and looking at interesting things in it. In this painting of the little fairy on the mushroom, the eye stoppers in this painting would be the snails in the corner of the paintings, and also the mushrooms, and at the top of the paintings it's the darker colors in the corner, and also some of the grass blades that are poking up. In this next painting, the focal point, of course, is the moon, and you want to keep the viewer's interest in the center of the painting, so I put some bushes and some trees in the corners of the paintings there, and that keeps the viewer's eye bouncing back in towards the waterfall and also in towards the moon. So this was just sort of a quick overview of all the different kinds of composition that there are. As you can see, you can get really complicated if you want to and use all kinds of mathematical formulas and geometrical equations and all kinds of things that way, or you can just kind of follow some simple ideas like L-shaped compositions and triangle compositions. It just depends on what you like to do. I'm not much for math, really, so I like to follow the idea of the simple L-shaped and the triangle compositions. And I will leave my affiliate links for Amazon down in the description below so that you can find these books on Amazon, and they have a little bit more in-depth explanations. And I would also urge you to find Jerry Yarnell's website. I think it's jerryyarnell.com or it's yarnellart.com. I'll put those links down below too. And see if he still has that DVD on composition, because that really is the best explanation I have ever seen from anybody on composition, and it's really helpful for me. And it's kind of the main way that I try to set up my compositions. So thanks everybody for watching. Thank you so much for your support. If you have any questions or suggestions about what you would like to see next, just leave them in the comments down below. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see what my next videos will be. And I will catch you later.